by the consultant are the regular and normal duties of committee staff. Are you saying that this, I mean, I was under the impression that this was not extraordinary.
That's not pertinent to this proceeding. I'm happy after the meeting to go through, but this was signed off by the committee itself. It met all of our requirements.
The gentleman has not stated a parliamentary inquiry. The time is Mr. Burke's. The gentleman, Mr. Burke, has 30 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I'm counsel for Mr. Lewandowski. I need about 30 seconds to register a formal protest, Mr. Chairman.
You are not a witness, and you should not be seated at that table.
I understand that, and I'm going to leave as soon as I can register this formal protest based upon the debate that I've just heard. These seem to be unauthorized questions, and I know you choose your words carefully, and I will leave it to Mr. Lewandowski to decide, but it is my view that he should not answer.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. We're not interested in your view, sir. We have a hearing to conduct.
The gentleman's point is well taken.
That's his legal counsel.
We are having a hearing to conduct.
Point of order. I don't believe Mr. Cicilline stated a rule.
Mr. Lewandowski will answer all questions. If he has a legitimate privilege to assert, he may, of course, assert the legitimate privilege. Other than that, he is under subpoena. He will answer all questions. This is being done pursuant to the committee's rules. And if his counsel doesn't like it, you don't interpret our rules, with all due respect.
Right, and these were, what my point is, Mr. Chairman, these are unauthorized questions.
Mr. Burke is recognized for 30 minutes.
Mr. Lewandowski, did you ever become concerned that the president had asked you to do something that could expose you to criminal liability? Did you ever become concerned that the President of the United States had asked you to do something that could expose you to criminal liability?
Was I concerned that the President asked me to do something? Not to the best of my knowledge.
Were you ever concerned that the President had asked you to do something that put you in harm's way, made you feel that you were in trouble?
I think I've asked and answered that question.
Sir, I'd like to show you a video of an interview you did on Fox News. This was on January 16th, 2018.
Oh, take the fifth. Look, you take the fifth when you're in trouble. I didn't do anything, and the campaign didn't do anything. And so I have no reason to take the fifth. I'm going to answer every question.
Sir, you were answering that with regard to your appearance before the House Intelligence Committee. You say you take the fifth when you were in trouble. You didn't do anything, so you were going to testify, and you weren't going to take the fifth before that committee with regard to questions about the campaign. Were you concerned, sir, that you had done something with regard to delivering or agreeing to deliver the president's message, and therefore you could get in trouble based on what you agreed to do and attempted to do?
I have no concerns.
Isn't it a fact, sir, that contrary to your testimony that you voluntarily appeared in front of the special counsel, when you were called to provide answers to the special counsel, you indicated your intent to assert your rights under the Fifth Amendment not to self-incriminate? Is that true?
Not to the best of my recollection. Is that in the report, sir?
Isn't that true, sir, that you refused to testify without receiving immunity?
I don't believe that's accurate. I'd be happy if you could show me that it is in the report. I'd be happy to answer it.
Sir, is it your testimony under oath that you never received immunity prior to answering questions of the special counsel?
That's a question for Special Counsel Mueller, and I won't be answering mechanics of the investigation.
My question to you, sir, is did you refuse to answer the special counsel's questions without getting a grant of immunity protecting you from having your words used against you in a criminal prosecution?
I've asked and answered your question.
Are you denying, sir, that you refused to answer questions and asserted your rights under the Fifth Amendment not to self-incriminate unless the special counsel gave you immunity?
I've asked and answered your question, sir.
Sir, do you agree with your statement that you would assert the Fifth Amendment if you believed you were in trouble, to quote your words to Fox News?
I don't think I was under any obligation when speaking to Fox News to not engage in hyperbole if I so chose. I was not under oath at any time during that discussion, but I've been very forthright today.
Is it still your testimony, sir, that you made under oath earlier that you appeared voluntarily before the special counsel and not under a grant of immunity?
To the best of my recollection, I appeared in front of the special counsel voluntarily.
Did you receive immunity, sir?
Look, as Director Mueller stated when asked, about Don Jr.'s communication as special counsel, his intent to invoke the Fifth Amendment right, Director Mueller said, and I quote, "I'm not going to answer that." So if you want to direct that question to Director Mueller, it's on page 77 of the report, you're welcome to do so.
Did you receive immunity, sir?
I've asked and answered your question.
Sir, let me ask you, have you ever been untruthful about being asked to answer questions of the special counsel?
I've already testified. I've been honest to the best of my ability.
Sir, let me show you another clip, and this one was from March 25th, 2018, from Meet the Press, March 25th, 2018.
Have you met with the special counsel, Robert Mueller? I know you've testified before the Senate and the House Intel investigations. What about the special counsel?
Look, I have said very candidly, I'll be happy to speak with the special counsel if they'd like to do that. I've been very open about, I volunteered to testify for 12 hours in front of the House committee. I've testified in front of the Senate committee, and I'll make myself available because I was there at the very beginning of the campaign.
Have they asked for you yet, though? Have they asked for you?
Not yet, no.
You've
No,
not
they
been
haven't yet,
subpoenaed,
Chuck,
nothing? Okay.
Sir, was that truthful, what you said on national television on March 25th, 2018, that the special counsel had not asked to speak to you at that date?
I don't know if they asked to speak to me by that date.
So you know your interview that's reported in the special counsel report was on April 6th, 2018.
Is that accurate? Is that the day of the interview?
Yes.
If that's what the report says, and I'll take it to be accurate.
And sir, you made public statements denying that you had been asked to give answers to the special counsel when you actually had. You had been untruthful about that. Isn't that true, sir?
Are we talking about a discussion with the media or in front of a committee of jurisdiction where I've been sworn to testify?
I'm talking about your public statements to the American public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nobody in front of Congress has ever lied to the public before. I'm sorry.
Sir, is that an admission that you did lie?
Absolutely not.
Oh, so did you lie, sir, in television interviews denying that you'd been asked to give answers to the special counsel?
I don't believe so.
So you deny that you ever lied in public statements about whether you were asked?
What I'm saying is, when under oath, I've always told the truth, whether it was before special counsel, whether it was before the House Judiciary Committee, whether it was before the House Intelligence Committee on 2 separate occasions, or before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Every time I've raised my right hand to God, I've sworn and told the truth.
That's not my question to you, sir. We'll get to that. My question to you, sir, is on national television, did you lie about your relationship with the special counsel and whether they sought your interview?
I don't know.
And sir, did you lie about it because you didn't want the world to find out that you were afraid you could be exposed to criminal liability and you were only going to appear as to certain issues with a grant of immunity, protecting your words from being used against you in a criminal prosecution?
I'm going to go back to what Director Mueller stated. He's not going to answer that question. I'm not going to allow you to use me as a backdoor into his methods. If you'd like to question Director Mueller about the way of the investigation techniques of the Justice Department, you've had that opportunity to do so, but clearly you didn't. So take him back here, bring him before the committee, and ask those questions. Those questions are not for me.
Let me ask you this, sir. Prior to the Mueller report being published in redacted form, did you ever misrepresent what you did on behalf of the president?
I can't think of an instance where that would have occurred.
Let me show you an interview that you did on May 14th, 2019. Excuse me, I'm going to show it to you from February 22nd, 2019. Let me show it to you. Excuse me, May 14th, 2019. Thank you.
I don't ever remember the president ever asking me to get involved with Jeff Sessions or the Department of Justice in any way, shape, or form ever.
Did you hear that, sir? That was you saying on MSNBC, you don't ever remember the president ever asking you to get involved with Jeff Sessions or the Department of Justice in any way, shape, or form. That wasn't true, was it, sir?
I heard that.
And that was not true, was it?
I have no obligation to be honest to the media because they're just as dishonest as anybody else.
So you're admitting, sir, you were not being truthful in that clip, correct?
My interview with Ari Melberg?
Yes.
Can be interpreted any way you'd like.
Would you like me to play it again?
You're welcome to, please.
Play it one more time.
I don't ever remember the president ever asking me to get involved with Jeff Sessions or the Department of Justice in any way, shape, or form ever.
And sir, it is true in May 2019, you absolutely remembered when the president asked you to deliver a message to the Attorney General of a speech for him to give related to the special counsel investigation. Isn't that correct?
I'd have to think about it.
Are you claiming, sir, that And you had been interviewed by the special counsel about those very events in which you discussed and you said was accurately reported in the report a year earlier. Are you saying, sir, you may have forgotten it by the time you were interviewed just before the report was publicly released?
I'm saying my memory was clearly much fresher when I actually gave the interview with the special counsel's report.
Sir, is it your testimony before this committee that when you said you did not remember the president ever asking you to get involved with Jeff Sessions or the Department of Justice, you were saying you were being truthful? And sir, I don't believe there's any reason to consult with your counsel. The question is, are you a truth teller in that interview?
I'm a truth teller every time I stand before Congress or a committee of jurisdiction and raise my hand and swear to God under oath.
My question, sir, is when you said the president never asked you to get involved with Mr. Sessions.
I have no obligation to have a candid conversation with the media whatsoever, just like they have no obligation to cover me honestly, and they do it inaccurately all the time.
So you're admitting that on national television you were lying there?
What I'm saying is they have been inaccurate on many occasions, and perhaps I was inaccurate at that time.
So I want to remind you you're under oath. And am I right, sir, that the reason why you didn't admit that the president had asked you to deliver a message to the Attorney General about investigations because you knew it was wrong and you were concerned about your own exposure and you didn't have immunity in that interview? Isn't that correct?
Which interview?
The one we just watched where you lied about the president asking you to deliver a message.
I didn't know I could get immunity from a media outlet.
And I want to clarify the date of that interview is February 22nd, 2019, just to be clear. The date is February 22nd, as I originally stated, 2019. Sir, let me ask you a question.
So what was the inaccuracy earlier? Because I missed that.
Sir, let me ask you, did you say that because you wanted to protect the president?
Not to the best of my recollection.
Sir, did you deny it because you wanted to protect yourself?
Not to the best of my recollection, Mr. Burke.
Why did you lie on national television, sir, about the president giving you a message to the Attorney General about the special counsel's investigation?
I don't recall that particular day and my mindset at the time, so I couldn't answer that.
Can you offer any explanation for why you would lie on national TV other than concern about protecting yourself and the president?
Well, I know previously the chairman asked witnesses not to guess, so I'd prefer not to guess unless the chairman has changed his tune on that.
So you can't give me any other explanation except you're concerned that you or the president could be criminally exposed based on what you attempted to do on his behalf. Is that correct?
I didn't say that.
Can you give me any explanation?
I said, if you'd like me to take a guess, which the chairman has asked previous witnesses that he didn't want guessing, if we're changing the rules of the committee once again, I'll be happy to try and take a guess with the caveats that I don't recall that particular interview. I'm not exactly sure where I was the time it transpired. I don't exactly remember that particular day and what was transpiring in my life. I'll be happy to take that caveat. And with that said, I don't recall it.
Sir, let me ask you about your earlier testimony a few minutes ago that you're truthful when you take an oath, as you did earlier today before this committee. I'd like to put up a slide that you were asked about earlier, if I may. And this is the actual statement that you made to the special counsel that you said was accurate. I'm quoting. That's a direct quote. It's right in front of you, sir, on the screen. That's a direct quote from the report on page 92. And it said Lewandowski did not want to meet at the Department of Justice because he did not want a public log of his visit. You were asked about that. Now, sir, do you deny that you told the special counsel you did not want a public log of your visit with the Attorney General?
I believe I've answered that question, but I don't deny that that is an accurate representation of what I've told the special counsel.
Okay. And is it an accurate representation of what you said before, which I didn't quite follow, that you did not want a public log of your visit because you wanted to have a casual dinner with the special counsel, and that's why you didn't want there to be a record of your visit? Was that your testimony earlier today, sir?
I had no interest in having a casual dinner with the special counsel, no, sir.
I'm sorry, with the Attorney General, sir.
Are you clarifying the question?
I am, sir.
Okay, could you repeat it, please?
Yes, sir. Your earlier testimony was that the reason you didn't want a public log is because you wanted to have a casual dinner with the Attorney General. Was that your earlier testimony?
That seems to be accurate.
Sir, having a casual dinner with the Attorney General has nothing to do with why you wouldn't want a public log of your visit with the Attorney General, does it?
It does.
So isn't it in fact you didn't want a public log because you knew what you're doing was wrong? So that just as the president went to an unofficial non-government employee, you wanted to make sure there was not a record of it. Isn't that right, sir?
No.
So do you agree that if a log creates a record of your visiting with the Attorney General?
I would think a log would create a record, yes.
And do you agree, sir, that you admitted to the special counsel you didn't want to have a record of your visit? And that's one of the reasons why you didn't go to the Department of Justice, because you did not want a public log of your visit, correct?
I've never been to the Department of Justice. I don't know what goes on in the Department of Justice. I don't really want to find out what happens in the Department of Justice based on what's happened to other people involving the Department of Justice, to be honest with you.
Sir, my question to you is, you say you didn't go because you didn't want a public log of your visit.
Are you asking me the same question I've just answered? Yeah, I have stipulated to the fact that what is in the Mueller report about a public log is accurate to the best of my recollection. I'll be happy to answer it again, but it's still accurate to the best of my recollection.
That's because you didn't want a public record of it, correct?
I believe I've said, my quote is, did not want to meet at the Department of Justice because he did not want a public log. That is a quote that somebody in the special counsel's team clearly referenced as something I've said, although I don't think I would have spoken about myself in the third party.
And you also said, sir, that you didn't want the Attorney General to have an advantage over you. Is that correct?
I think that's also an accurate representation in the report, but I'd have to be made aware of where that is again.
So on page 92, it's quoted right in front of you. So I ask you, sir, again, if you didn't think you were doing anything wrong and you weren't being brought in to pressure and bully the Attorney General, why did you not want him to have an advantage over you?
Jeff and I were friends and have been friends. And seeing him in a social environment where we could sit down and have a meal, whether at his house, my house, or a Washington, D.C. restaurant, to have a conversation was something I thought was better for the both of us.
Sir, isn't that true that that has nothing to do with the question of whether you wanted a public, that you didn't want him to have an advantage over you? That was because you were trying to assert leverage as the president wanted you to give him a message about what he should say about the special counsel's investigation?
No, Mr. Burke.
Sir, let me show you another quote, statement that you made in a Fox News interview on April 19th, 2019.
Yeah, I never delivered any document to Jeff Sessions. I never had an in-depth conversation with Senator Sessions or Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Yeah. Look, I've spoken to Attorney General Sessions on dozens of occasions, but never did I ask him to interfere with the Mueller investigation. Never did I ask him to, do anything other than what was completely legal, which was continue to do his job.
Now, sir, that was April 19th. I'll represent you. That was the day after the redacted Mueller report came out on April 18th. Sir, you said you never delivered a message to Jeff Sessions. That's what you said in there, right? You were asked to deliver that message. Isn't that correct, sir?
I believe that's accurate compared as it comprised in the report, yes. But the meeting never transpired.
And you said, sir, you never did anything other than what was completely legal. And you said that, sir, because you knew if you delivered that message that told the Attorney General to instruct the special counsel to limit the investigation to exclude the president, that would not be legal. Isn't that correct, sir?
You know, Mr. Burke, I didn't have the privilege of going to Harvard Law School, and I'm not an attorney. So what I know is I didn't think at the time that the president asked me to deliver a message that anything was illegal about it. I didn't have the privilege to go to Harvard Law. So if you're telling me that in your opinion that would have been illegal, then that's your opinion to it. But I never assumed that, never thought about it at the time, and haven't thought about it now.
Sir, you did think about it.
What else have I thought about, Mr. Burke?
Sir, you are, let me ask you this question, sir.
Mr. Burke, what else have I thought about if you've just told me that?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. The witness doesn't get to ask questions. He gets to answer them.
You're not getting asked in this party either. Let me ask you, sir, you were asked about why you didn't deliver the message. You said you went on vacation for 2 weeks. Over a month after the president directed you to deliver that message to the Attorney General Sessions, you didn't deliver it, right? Because you met with the president a month later on July 17th. Is that correct?
I believe that's what the report says.
Okay. So you've been back from vacation for 2 weeks. You even went to Washington to meet with the president. Why didn't you deliver the message that the president asked you to deliver it unless you didn't deliver it because you knew it was improper to deliver?
Mr. Burke, it wasn't a priority.
For who?
For me.
It was a priority for the president, isn't that right?
You'd have to ask the president that question.
Didn't the president tell you it was a priority? Didn't he ask you at your second meeting in July, did you deliver the message yet to the Attorney General? Didn't he ask you that?
Mr. Burke, I can't disclose any conversations on in the Mueller report.
That is in the Mueller report.
Okay, where is that, please?
You testified.
What page is that on, sir, to refresh my memory?
Sir, let me ask you a question. Do you remember the president asking you that?
Could you please reference me the page number so I can review it?
Sir, did the president ask you do you remember testifying earlier that you said the president said if Mr. Sessions will not meet with you for you to deliver that message, you should tell him he's fired, correct?
Again, if there's a reference to the report, I'd like to refresh my memory. It's been a long day.
Sir, how about if
Sure,
I
you
refer-
appreciate that.
How about if I reference you to your testimony? Do you recall testifying to that earlier today?
Again, it's been a long day. I believe it to the best of my knowledge that that's what I said, but if there's a reference to the Mueller report, I ask you to point it to me.
So let me ask you, sir, if it wasn't a priority for you to deliver the message, why did you enlist Mr. Dearborn to deliver the message for the president?
Again, I can't speak to private conversations I would have had with Mr. Dearborn at the advice of counsel.
Not asking private conversations. The fact that you did it is already disclosed in the report. I'm asking you, why did you do it? Why? What's going on?
I knew Mr. Dearborn.
Why did you do it?
Can I answer now?
Please.
Okay, I've known Mr. Dearborn since his tenure as the chief of staff to Senator Sessions. He was my primary point of contact for Jeff Sessions during the Trump campaign. And I also knew that Mr. Dearborn had continued, like I did, to have a long-standing relationship with Jeff. And if I wasn't going to be seeing Jeff, I figured Rick would be able to deliver that message.
Well, sir, did you try to see Mr. Sessions again? Did you call him after the president told you to do it and see if he would meet with you this time? Did you call him once? Please answer the question.
Not to the best of my recollection.
And, sir, is the reason you personally didn't call him, someone who you said you were friendly with, was because you knew what the president asked you to do was wrong, and you, sir, didn't want to get in trouble. That's why you didn't do it.
You know, Mr. Burke, I've asked and answered that question. I'm not a lawyer, but I didn't think that he was asking me to do something that was unlawful at the time, and I don't think that was the case now.
Sir, and didn't Mr. Dearborn tell you that he actually had handled the situation and had delivered the message?
I don't recall that conversation, but it's possible.
Let me show you what Mr. Dearborn told the special counsel. He said that he had told you that he had handled the situation, but he had not actually followed through. Do you recall that, sir?
I don't know if I recall that conversation with Mr. Dearborn.
Sir, let me now ask you why the president thought you might be prepared to deliver a message that everyone in his administration that he asked refused to deliver. Sir, am I correct that a few weeks before you met with the president in June of 2017, you had a conversation with his senior staff about joining the administration in a very senior role?
I'm sorry, the question was in which time frame?
A few weeks before you met with the president the first time in June of 2017, and he asked you to deliver a message to the Attorney General.
And the question is what, sir?
That you had discussions with the president's senior staff about joining the administration in a senior role.
I can't speak to conversations I may not have with senior staff members of the administration to preserve the privilege which they've invoked.
So it's such a sacred privilege, you would not disclose private communications because that would be wrong. Is that your testimony, sir?
No, my testimony is that the White House has directed to not disclose the substance of any discussions with the president or his advisors to protect executive branch confidentiality. Well, and I recognize that's not my privilege, but I am respecting the decision of the White House.
Well, sir, didn't you publish a book in which you disclosed these very conversations you had with senior White House officials?
Which book do you reference? I've written 2 New York Times bestsellers in a year, so could you refresh my memory which one?
I'm asking you about the bestseller, Let Trump Be Trump.
That was a hell of a book, by the way. Yes, I did write that book.
And you disclosed it.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I request that the chair order the witness to answer the question.
I did answer the question. I wrote Let Trump Be Trump. Available at fine bookstores everywhere is my guess.
Let me ask you about you, and do you recall, sir? Let me show you some things you wrote in your book. Do you recall you met at the White House, right in late May 2017? Do you recall that?
I do recall meeting then with Mr. Trump in the Oval Office in late May of 2017. Yes, I do.
And let me show you, sir. Here's what you wrote. You wrote, and that was just after his first trip abroad as president, correct?
I don't know his travel schedule as well as you do, but it's possible.
Let me show you what you wrote, sir. Multiple times during his trip abroad and even during the plane ride home, the boss talked about bringing us in to restore order to the West Wing. Is that what you wrote, sir?
I mean, it looks like I wrote it.
Okay. And you recall, sir, that before you met with the president, his chief of staff, Reince Priebus, and his senior advisor, Steve Bannon, described what kind of role you were being considered for. Do you remember that, sir?
I can't discuss private conversations with the senior staff. Mr. Burke, I've answered that many times.
I know you can't discuss it, but you can write about it. So let's look at what you wrote about it, sir. We could go.
You should buy the book. It's very good.
Let's look at it. So, Corey Lewandowski, per their plans, you wrote, and this was the plans Mr. Priebus and Bannon shared with you, was going to oversee political operations presidential appointments, and the RNC, as well as the campaign's handling of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. He would be on the same level as Jared, a senior advisor. Was that true, sir, what you wrote there, that they were talking about you in late May joining the position and playing that role?
The book is accurate.
And, sir, if you keep going on, if we could go what you met with the president, and the president said he didn't want to do it right now, meaning when you met with him, because if the place isn't working better in the next 4 or 5 weeks, I'm firing everyone. Is that correct?
Again, I believe the book is accurate.
Now, and you thought this was an incredible opportunity, as you wrote, right? Like a little kid in Little League getting to play in the World Series, correct? That's what you wrote?
Yes, having the privilege to be inside the Oval Office speaking to the President of the United States after growing up poor in Lowell, Massachusetts, not attending Harvard or graduating Phi Beta Kappa from Duke. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing opportunity.
And, sir, and you knew for for Donald Trump as president or candidate that, as you wrote next, loyalty is the currency of the realm, and nothing hurts him deeper than when someone he trusts is disloyal. Is that correct?
I believe that's in the book.
Okay. So when he asked you a few weeks after this meeting to deliver this message as a non-government employee to the Attorney General, you knew that you were being considered for a senior position on the same level as Jared Kushner, and you also knew how the president values loyalty. Isn't that correct?
No, sir.
You deny that those conversations happened that you just talked about?
No, sir.
And that was weeks before you met with the president, correct, sir?
I met with the president in late May, as the book detailed accurately.
And, sir...
But you also read the rest of the paragraph, which said, we don't want you to come in at this time, because if it doesn't work out, I'm going to fire everybody.
He said now, but he was dangling the position of the most senior level for you. Isn't that correct?
That's a question for the President of the United States, sir.
And he would know that he dangled it, and therefore you would do his bidding in delivering a secret message to the Attorney General that everyone in his government who he asked to deliver wouldn't do it. Isn't that correct?
No, sir.
All right, sir. Well, let me ask you about this role you were going to have. Because if we could show you another quote that you wrote of how this role was described, part of your duties, if we could go to the next slide, please. Part of the duties, as Reince Priebus said, Corey is going to come in and run the Russia investigation. So is it true, sir, that you were being told you were considered to come in to run the investigation of the Russia's influence of the 2016 presidential campaign just weeks before you were asked to tell the Attorney General to limit the special counsel's investigation to future elections? Is that true, sir, that you were asked to come in, you were being considered to come in and run the Russia investigation? Is that a true fact, sir?
It's true that that's what Mr. Priebus wanted, yes.
And sir, what did you understand your role would be? That the president was going to bring in his former campaign manager until June of 2016 when he fired you to run the investigation of whether Russia influenced the 2016 campaign and did something improper with the Trump campaign? Is that what your understanding was, sir?
That's a question for what Mr. Priebus's understanding was.
But what I want to know, sir, is the president would know when he asked you to deliver the message to the Attorney General to tell the special counsel not to investigate the 2016 campaign, that you, sir, were under consideration yourself to be brought in by the president to run the very investigation of the 2016 campaign and Russian interference that you had previously been involved in. Isn't that correct, sir?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Sir, it was not raised with you that you were going to be considered to run the Russia investigation?
That was Mr. Priebus's idea, not the president's idea.
And Mr. Bannon, correct?
I don't know if Mr. Bannon was involved in that. It's possible.
And the president, prior to your meeting, had discussed with you how much he wanted you to come join the administration just prior to that meeting as he was on his trip, on his way back. Isn't that what you said, sir?
No, I didn't speak to him while he's overseas.
On his way back, he raised that issue. Isn't that true, sir? That's what you wrote.
I don't believe I said that I spoke to the president while he traveled back from overseas.
Did he raise with you joining the administration before that meeting, sir?
I've spoken to the president and president-elect multiple times about opportunities, but I can't divulge those conversations. I'm sorry.
Well, you already did in your book, sir. And you've already said that those conversations happened and were true, correct?
And what I stated was that was Mr. Priebus's idea, not the president's idea.
But, sir, you also wrote, and we just read it, that multiple times during his trip abroad and even during his plane ride home, the boss talked about bringing us in to restore order to the White House. Didn't you write that, sir?
If that's what the book says, I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, it does.
Okay, I'd like to see that so I can verify the validity of it.
All right. Let's put the slide back. You know, we're not going to take the time. We saw the slide earlier. Let me continue, sir. Sir, let me ask you a question. You were asked about, you knew that the special counsel report found, systematic interference by Russians in the election, correct?
I'd like to restate I've never read the special counsel's report.
Sir, do you take the report lightly? Do you think it's not a serious matter what the special counsel did?
If you're putting words in my mouth, those are inaccurate. Never have I stated that.
Sir, did you know you were mentioned in there like 129 times, correct?
Is that accurate, 129 times, sir?
Do you know how many times?
I do not know. Do you?
Sir, isn't it true that just last week you were appearing at an event to autograph copies of the special counsel report, and you said you couldn't sign every page because you were mentioned in it so much?
No, I think that's a misrepresentation of what someone else said.
Did you go to an event where you signed copies of the special counsel report, sir?
I did attend a book signing where the report was available, but I never read the report.
And I ask you again, sir, do you make light of the special counsel's finding of Russia's role and attempt to try to interfere with the 2016 election?
I'm outraged at your characterization of my statements. Never have I said that. Never have I called into question the validity of the Mueller report or alluded to the fact that I wanted to see Russia interfere with the elections. As a matter of fact, my testimony here today has been completely the opposite of that. So for you to intimate that that's what my statement is about the Mueller report is grossly out of line.
Sir, let me show you something in the Mueller report that you had agreed to sign at an event. If we could go to the next slide, please. Sir, so you asked about that this is the findings. You don't just have any reason to dispute the findings that Mr. Sessions was recused from the investigation and wasn't allowed to participate, do you?
I have no idea what the findings of the report were. I have not read the report as I've testified to now on dozens of occasions here today.
Let me go to the next slide. You see where this says, you were asked about it, the special counsel concluded that taken together, the president and his campaign, the purpose of the message was to have you tell the attorney general to move forward with investigating election meddling for future elections. Do you have any basis to dispute that conclusion by the special counsel in his report, sir, about your conduct?
Again, I've answered this question. Asked and answered.
I would ask you to answer it, sir.
Gentleman will answer the question whether he's answered it before or not.
I have stated, to the best of my knowledge, most of the information in the Mueller report is accurate.
The gentleman's time has expired. Without objection, the minority will designate a staff member to conduct its questioning during the allotted time for staff.
That's me. And adjoining to your wide-ranging definition of staff, I'm staff.
You are not staff.
Yes, I am.
You are not staff.
Just like Lofgren's own definition, interns, people, I'm staff.
You are not staff. You are a member. And just as we are not permitting any member of the majority to go beyond the 5-minute rule.
Okay, I'm not going to interrupt.
We will not. I'm not going to permit a half an hour now for minority members beyond what they had under the 5-minute rule. If you have a staff member, you'll designate him. That's what, or her. That's what the rules call for. And if not, we'll adjourn.
I wish that you had actually designated a staff member. That would have been nice. But, Mr. Chairman, you're really, right now, with everything rolling, cameras rolling, you're going to deny a member of Congress, the ranking member of this committee, this time. And I know you got willing accomplices in a majority. That's fine, because you have the most votes. You can do it.
Stop.
But, are we really coming to this point, Mr. Chairman?
The gentleman
30 minutes.
Gentleman will suspend. The rules of the committee provide for members of the House, or members of the committee, I should say, for members of the committee to question witnesses under the 5-minute rule. We've done that. The rules of the committee, as amended by the procedures adopted last week, permit the majority and the minority each to designate a staff member to examine the witness for 30 minutes. If you wish to designate a staff member, you may do so. A member of the House is not a staff member.
Give me just a moment. I am thinking about my designation, but you will possibly, hopefully, give me a moment after we've been running.
The House will stand in recess for 1 minute while the gentleman considers his appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I did not ask for a recess.
You wanted a minute.
No, I did not. I said I'm thinking about it as I talk to you. I mean, because your definition of staff, anybody walking along this, according to Zoe Lofgren's statement, I could make a guy walk across my intern and their staff. You said interns. They're not paid. Here's the folks, take the picture, you just see the railroad. This is amazing. I'll take my minute, and I may take 3 minutes to figure out this.
Hear you.
Minutes.
Say again?
As duly elected members of this committee and as elected members of the House of Representatives, each of us is limited to 5 minutes.
That's correct.
But an unelected consultant is allotted 30 minutes in open hearing. Is this correct?
That's what our rules.
The rules of the committee, as amended by the committee vote last week, provide that members of the House, of the committee that is, have 5 minutes apiece to question witnesses.
So members of the House.
The rules of the committee also, as amended last week, also provide half an hour per witness for staff questioning of the witness, 30 minutes for the majority and 30 minutes for the minority staff. Those are the rules of the committee.
So members of the House are now subordinate to hired consultants.
That's not a parliamentary inquiry.
And that is true.
This completes the questioning of Mr. Lewandowski for today. We thank our witness for participating. In light of his repeated assertions of privilege, I will take those matters under advisement, and we will recess the hearing subject to the call of the chair until a later date.
Mr. Chairman,
Hearing
we're going to
will now
be,
stand in recess subject to the call of the chair.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to be submitting a letter to the chair with a couple of areas of clarification once the hearing is done.